Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Friday, everybody. I trust you had a productive week and have a restful weekend ahead. My apologies in advance. This is being recorded from a room in Auckland Airport. I'm flying out of New Zealand today and returning to Asia. Hopefully the sound quality is not too distracting. Just a quick piece of housekeeping as well. There likely will not be an episode tomorrow on Saturday. If that is the case, I will make up for it by releasing an episode on Sunday. We begin with the economy, as we usually do, and there are about half a dozen or so updates which we need to cover, so we're going to move quickly through each one of these. In a state media interview published yesterday, Thursday, Lan Fo'an, the country's newly appointed finance minister, said that China will expand government spending in 2024 through a combination of policy tools. Lan explained that the government will, quote, strengthen the overall coordination of fiscal resources, utilizing a combination of special bonds, national bonds, and other tools, such as tax incentives and fiscal subsidies, to moderately expand the scale of fiscal spending, end quote. Adding, quote, we will make sure the overall size of fiscal spending increases to play a better role stimulating domestic demand, end quote. Economists and regular China Update viewers have anticipated more expansionary fiscal policy to be carried out in 2024 as policymakers struggle to get past damage from the 3 years of zero COVID while dealing with problems such as massive local government debts and a prolonged property market slump. Of course, expansionary fiscal support will mean more debt. Lan explained in the interview that, quote, the deficit ratio is an important indicator of macroeconomic policy with room to address potential risks and challenges, end quote, adding that, quote, special purpose bonds are an important fiscal tool to support local authorities and expand investment. $500 billion worth of these special bonds were issued last year. End quote. Up next for the economy, according to a report from Morgan Stanley's quantitative research team published this week, China and Hong Kong equities saw a combined net outflow of $3.8 billion from active long-only managers last month, the worst month in 2023 and the third largest monthly outflow on record. Quote, both investors' redemptions from equity funds and portfolio managers' rebalancing to deepen underweight on China contributed to the outflows, end quote, the analysts said. Meanwhile, we are seeing more signs this week that Beijing is trying to contain the damage from tough new gaming regulations that triggered an $80 billion rout on the last trading day before Christmas last year. UK-based Reuters and Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post have both reported, citing unnamed sources, that Feng Shixin, head of the publishing unit at China's publicity department, which runs the country's gaming regulator, has been removed from his post. His exit, both outlets report, was linked to the release of draft gaming rules. UK-based Financial Times writes, quote, Feng's removal would add to evidence that senior Chinese leaders are becoming more sensitive to the concerns of investors after largely ignoring them during the big technology crackdown of 2021, even though worries about policy volatility persist, end quote. We also remember that China's gaming watchdog approved 105 games soon after the rules' release, suggesting also a softening or a walk-back of types. Analysts have been debating the significance of this recent Feng story. Quote, confidence in the outlook for Tencent and NetEase may rebound further after these reports that a key official involved in overseeing China's video gaming industry has stepped down. Sentiment was hit by the share price flash crash of December 22nd, but the recent more conciliatory tone from China's National Press and Publication Administration supports our view. The basic outlook for Tencent's games business is largely unchanged, as rising regulatory oversight isn't new, end quote. Redmond Wong, a market strategist at Saxo Capital Markets in Hong Kong, made similar comments, expressing, quote, if the story is accurate, it will send a signal that what happened was not a reversal of policy direction to more tightening in the mobile and online gaming industry and may give investors some relief on policy stability and certainty. But overall, investors are still skeptical. The news is positive, but is not big enough to move the needle or the big picture." End quote. Next up for the economy. According to South Korea's Trade Ministry this week, the country's exports to the United States exceeded shipments to China for the first time in 2 decades in the month of December. Quote, "In the sign of shifting ties amid global tensions over economic security and technology supply chains," end quote, in the words of one analyst. According to the official numbers, South Korea sold $11.3 billion in goods to the US in December, compared with $10.9 billion to China. This coming as South Korea's overall exports rose 5.1% year-on-year. Quote, "The data come as the US looks to generate support for its agenda to reduce dependence on China in global supply chains and limit the country's access to advanced semiconductor technology. That has placed countries like South Korea and Japan in an awkward spot between their 2 biggest trading partners. Both Seoul and Tokyo are key military allies of Washington. Another important dimension given Beijing's increasing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific and rising tensions in the region." End quote. South Korea and the US have a free trade agreement which began in 2012. China remains South Korea's biggest trading partner due to the latter's massive imports from the former. Next up, we continue with the economy and then move to Taiwan. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. If you're getting some value from this episode, I only have one ask. That is to like and subscribe. This is the primary way in which this channel grows. The main way it is shown to new people is if the algorithm is happy. For anyone who wants to help keep the channel financially sustainable, which allows me to continue doing this every day, open and free for all, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. My commitment has been a channel open to all that is reliant primarily on subscriber support rather than corporate sponsorship. And with your assistance, I know I can keep it that way. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Okay, we have 2 more updates on the economy to cover. The Caixin BBD New Economy Index, which looks at the contribution of high value-added industries, such as biomedicine, to China's total economic inputs, dropped to a 5-month low in December, due chiefly to a dual decrease in technology and capital inputs. The index came in at 29.9 last month, indicating that new economy industries accounted for 29.9% of China's overall economic input activities, down from 30.6 in November, and marking a 3rd straight month of decline. However, the Caixin Services Purchasing Managers Index did quite well in December, showing that activity in China's services sector expanded at the fastest pace in the past 5 months in December. The services PMI came in at 52.9 last month, up from 51.5 in November. A reading above 50 indicates expansion. Wang Zhe, the senior economist behind the index, expressed on the findings, quote, "The services sector logged diverging price increases in December, with rising costs in raw minerals and labor contributing to the fastest growth in input costs over the past 5 months. However, intense market competition restrained service providers from raising fees, resulting in only a marginal increase in the gauge measuring a 4-month low." End quote. Adding, quote, "Optimism prevailed in the services industry, with enterprises expressing confidence in an improved economic outlook for the coming year. The annual Central Economic Work Conference in December highlighted ongoing economic recovery and progress in high-quality development. But it is also critical to note that domestic and external demand is still insufficient, and the foundation for a positive economic recovery needs to be consolidated." End quote. Okay, finally for today, Taiwan's presidential election is only a matter of days away. The world is watching as the outcome of this election will directly affect one of the world's most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints. A popular blog called Frozen Garlic, a play on the Taiwanese pronunciation of the words "to be elected," authored by Nathan Butto, an Associate Research Fellow at the Institute of Political Science and Associate Research Fellow at the Election Study Center at the National Changchi University in Taipei, has provided an excellent breakdown in the last polls taken before the election. It's worth quoting some of his observations at length. Quote, "There have been quite a few polls released in the past few days, My favorite poll, the Formosa poll, is not one of them. I guess they decided not to do polling over the weekend or on the New Year's Day holiday. Here are the most recent presidential polling results, which I shamelessly took from the Wikipedia page on presidential polls. I'm not making any comments about the quality of individual polls. Some of them are pretty good, others are a little more dodgy. Still, taken together, they tell a fairly consistent story. All of them show Lai, of the DPP, leading. In most of them, Lai's lead is under 5 points. However, there are a couple in which he leads by double digits. In all but one poll, Ho, of the KMT, is in second place. His lead over Ko, that is, Ke Wen-je of the TPP, is usually more than 5 points, and in some polls it's in double digits. In 2016 and in 2020, Tsai Ing-wen led the final polls by large margins, often by more than 20 points. Of course, there is always uncertainty in democratic elections, but we could go to election day fairly confident about who would win, and the main question was how big her victory would be. This year is not like that. The polls suggest that Lai is the most likely to win, but it is no sure thing. Likewise, the polls suggest that Ko will finish last, but that's also not written in stone. Ho is most likely to finish second, but I wouldn't bet my house against him either winning or coming in last place. This is one of those elections where we will have to wait until the count of the votes. The crystal ball is pretty cloudy." End quote. Beijing is watching this election closely and will not be happy with a Lai DPP victory. Admiral Li Ximing, a former Taiwan military chief, speaking to media this week, expressed, quote, "I believe they, Beijing, will take more hawkish actions to try to warn the new president over his future policies towards China." End quote. And on this point, I want to end today's video with these observations made by UK-based The Economist in a piece called, "For China, Taiwan's elections are a looming crisis." We are now quoting selected excerpts from the piece directly. "Victory for Mr. Lai would mark the DPP's third presidential win in a row. Chinese officials and scholars have issued warnings, notably to counterparts in America, Taiwan's superpower protector, that they have no trust in Mr. Lai, whom they call a dangerous lifelong campaigner for Taiwanese independence. According to Chinese warnings, there would be no wait-and-see period after a Lai victory. To deter a President-elect Lai from radical moves, the People's Liberation Army can be expected to stage exercises that threaten Taiwan in new ways," it is said. These would aim to show resolve to the Chinese public and to teach the island's voters that they have rejected the path of peace. New provocations could include unmanned Chinese aircraft flying over Taiwan, or China's Navy or Coast Guard finding a pretext to search island-bound ships. China recently reimposed tariffs on some Taiwanese goods, arguing that the current DPP-led government had trampled commitments needed to preserve a cross-strait trade deal. The Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement, ECFA. Victory for Mr. Lai could see the ECFA suspended in its entirety. Along with Taiwan's presidential race, China's leaders will be watching parliamentary elections held on the same day. Quite possibly the KMT and the newer centrist outfit, the Taiwan People's Party, TPP, may do well and secure a majority in the legislative yuan and significant control over the agenda of the next president, even if that is Mr. Lai of the DPP. In that case, Taiwan's rambunctious democracy would be keeping alive Communist Party hopes of imposing its rule without a war, for now at least. If both presidential and legislative elections are a rout for the KMT, that will trigger heated debate on the mainland about whether that party has a future. Here ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful Friday, and I will either see you tomorrow or on Sunday.